What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I'm coming at you guys because it is time for Pepe. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Performage and Performapals and the Draco Slayers that help them out. I am taking you guys back on another retro profile for Pepe this time. And Pepe is, of course, the infamous 2015, 2016 deck. This deck first initially started at the beginning stages of 2015 and then rose to its occasion in 2016, becoming legitimately tier 0 to the point where the TCG had to create a instant Forbidden Limited list at that time because holy shit, Pepe had just gotten so damn broken. And one of the craziest things that I can honestly say about Performapal is that Performapal has so many different aspects to it that it's legitimately one of the highest selling, um, highest performing decks that were around at that time. And it wasn't just because of the fact that it was a pendulum based deck to fit in with the new mechanic at the time. It was the fact that this is a deck that took the main character's archetype that was spanning between multiple archetypes and then just grew from there. Not to mention, Performer Mages weren't even part of the original archetype. They were just a sub-series of what was the Performers. Because you had the Performer Pals, you had the Performer Mages, you had the Odd Eyes, then you had the variations that spread from the Odd Eyes. So, and then you had the Pendulum Magicians themselves. So, which was just, yeah, a span of multiple archetypes all pieced together in one. And the crazy shenanigans that endured. Now, this version of Pepe definitely cheeks some outs to it because I don't remember the full original TCG list. And from what I scouted out, my extra deck might not be all the cards, it might be more OCG oriented. So I do apologize. But for the most part, yeah, this is what I could, get together for Pepe. So when we go ahead and we go into it. So starting off with the monster lineup, and trust me, oh, there's a lot of monsters in this build. We have triple copies of the Performer Pal, Skull Crobat Joker, Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, 3 copies of Performer Pal Monkey Board, 2 copies of Performapal Lizard Draw, and 1 copy of Performapal Gill Turtle. So that's the Performa Pals. For the Performa Mages, I have triple copies of Performa Mage Plush Fire, with triple copies of Performer Mage Damaged Juggler, with 2 copies of Performer Mage Hat Tricker, 1 copy of Trick Clown, and 1 copy of Performer Mage Mirror Conductor. Alright, that's it for the Performer Mages. Then for the Draco Slayers, we got everybody. 3 copies of Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. Then 2 copies of Vector Pendulum, the Draco Overlord. And 1 copy of Master Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. And that's it for the Draco Slayers. Then for the rest of them, 2 copies of Max C and 2 copies of Effect Veiler. And that literally is all of the monsters. For the spells, triple copies of Draco Face Off with triple copies of Wavering Eyes. Then for the trap cards, we have 1 copy of Treacherous Trap Hole and 1 copy of Time Space Trap Hole. Alright, that is it for all of the I should say main deck monsters. That's all the cards for the main deck. Then going into the extra, we have the 2 copies of Ignister Providence, the Blasting Draco Slayer, 1 copy of Majestic Paladin, the Ascending Draco Slayer, 1 copy of Dinister Power, the Mighty Draco Slayer, 1 copy of Performamage Trapeze Magician, 1 copy of Castel, the Sky Blasting Musketeer, 1 Laval Chain, 1 Trap Tricks Rafflesia, 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Exciton Knight, 1 copy of number 16 Shockmaster, 1 copy of Utopia, Utopia Ray, Utopia the Lightning, and 1 copy of Silent Honors Arc. So that is pretty much all of the cards themselves for the main and the extra. There's a total of 40 cards in the main deck with a total of 15 in the extra. So I'm just going to say this now. I did not remember all the pieces to it. I just forgot I even had my own decks in lineup of things for Performages and Performapals. I still actually have to finish fixing up because there are no thumbnails to it, and I have to make some initial thumbnails. So Performage, Performapals have their own masquerade of things. The objective of the deck is to swarm the field with as many of the monsters as you possibly can, about pendulum summoning all of these massive amount of monsters through the searching, the drawing, setting up your scales, and then having these monsters interact with your opponent's cards to either negate, bounce, and do all these other things. So then when it comes back to your turn, you're just basically opening up Pandora's box once again with all of your resetting scales, setting scales, doing this, doing that with all of your pendulum cards. And it is something that was part of the reason why a lot of the Performapals and Performages cards had to be drastically hit, because things were just getting crazy, just ridiculously out of hand. Not to mention, this is also around the time when the Pendulum Magician cards started coming out, which I will do a separate video on them as well. So leading into it, we have Performapal, Skull Crobat, Joker. This is the Stratos for the Performapal engine. This monster can, on his normal summon, add 1 Performapal, Performapal, Odd Eyes, or Pendulum Magician monster from your deck to your hand, except for a copy of itself. Now, mind you that this is on a normal summon, which is perfectly fine. This thing basically allows you to go get your monsters on its normal, while its pendulum effect in its scale of 8 allows you to not be able to pendulum summon monsters who are not Performapal, Odd Eyes, or Pendulum Magician. That more so works for those decks that are the Performapal, Performation, Pendulum Magician, and Odd Eye stuff. But for this deck, it simply just helps you get into your scales. Performapal, Pendulum Sorcerer with a scale of 2. If a Pendulum monster is Pendulum summoned to your field, all your Performapals will currently gain 1,000 attack until the end of the turn. This basically helps with Swarm. If I did have them, Silver Claw would also be in here, because Silver Claw, part Naga, and then definitely helped later on with this build, because of the fact that when a lot of cards got hit, they were to make up for things that were already, like, the deck is already at that point just good. It's just whatever build you had to go for it was what you were going for, and that's what was up with this because of the effects of Pendulum Sorcerer. Where with a special summon, you can target up to 2 cards on your side of the field and destroy them. And if you did, you would add Performapal monsters from your deck with different names to your hand, which basically would help you get out to a lot of your other Performapal monsters that you can go get your Joker if it wasn't summoned. You can go get your Keyboard, your Girl Turtle, and them to help with your scales. I believe the only card that he couldn't get was a copy of itself, which is perfectly fine. But basically, yeah, you were able to get out your other pieces and help get rid of your pendulum scales for your other abilities later on. Now let's talk about the pieces of search, draw, and setup, where we have Performapal Lizard Draw, Performapal Gill Turtle, and Performapal Monkey Board. So Gill Turtle over here says if a Performapal card is activated in your other pendulum zone, you're able to draw a card. While you can only use this effect of Gill Turtle once per turn, basically what you would do with it is that you would set it with the Lizard Draw, who, if there was another Performapal monster in your pendulum scale, you can send this card to the grave to then be able to draw a card. And then that way it would combine with your Lizard Draw setup, because you'll have these 2 6s, which is perfectly fine because this 6 is going to go away, so then you can draw a card off of it. And at that point, if you did not search for it, you were searching for your monkey board. Monkey board's ability is that if you had another Performapal card in your pendulum zone, the scale will resort to, if you didn't have one, it will resort to a scale of 4. However, if it did have a Performapal in it, guess what? It's going to be a 1, which gives your scales from 1 to 6, with between Performapal Monkey Board and Performapal Guild Turtle. Then you are able to then add a level 4 or lower Performapal monster from your deck to your hand, but you only use that effect of Monkey Board once a turn, which is perfectly fine. With most of these, you're just using their pendulum abilities. And for this was what the whole loop was, where you would go for you would summon your Monkey Board, you summon your Skullcrow back, you would go get your Monkey Board, or you would go get your Lizard or your Guild Turtle, whichever one you would have the basis for. You would set up your scale so that your Lizard Draw and your Guild Turtle were already present. You would pop your Lizard Draw to draw, and then Guild Turtle will also draw for you. So that's at least 2 draws right there. You would summon your monkey. You would put your Monkey Board into the other scale so that way you can search for your Performapal Magician. Then you would then go ahead for your Pendulum, pop everything, and then just reset your scale, which was one of the many options that the deck had access to when it came to its variety of being able to create scales just off of its Performapal engine. Now, say for instance, you didn't rock out with your Performapal engine. Well, you had your other engine to play around with, and that was your Performage engine, which was your triple copies of your Plush Fire. When a Performage monster would be destroyed, that you control by battle card effect, you should summon this card from the pendulum zone and then take 500 points of damage. When this card is destroyed on the field by battle card effect, you should summon a Performage monster from your hand or deck, except for a copy of Plush Fire, which would then help you get into the rest of your clowns. Because you did run the significant setup for the clown engine. With the amount of cards that you had in this deck, Lester Pendulum definitely took advantage of that and its ability to pop things so that you could go get to your other scales. Now, with the clown engine, you have Performage, Damage Juggler, Hat Tricker, and Trick Clown, as well as Mirror Conductor. Mirror Conductor was basically just to help you get over monsters who had low defense but high attack, and then reverse those stats so that way you can beat up over things. It was also level 4, so you would have easier access to things as well for the Pendulum Summon later on. While it's a scale of 3, let's be real, you're really not using this much for its Pendulum scale, only if you had the scale of 5 or the scale set up, and most of your monsters in this deck are level 4, which is what you're opting into. Now, with Performages between Damage Juggler, Hat Tricker, and Trick Clown, Damage Juggler would absorb the damage that you would take, banish yourself from the graveyard, to then search out for Hat Tricker or Trick Clown. Trick Clown is not too hard to mess around with because you can easily just send it to the grave with effects, and then it would trigger off its ability, which was to be able to summon itself. Mind you, you don't even have to send it through the effects. You can just send it through any ability. And once it's sent to the grave, you'll summon it and then take the 1,000. With things like Hat Tricker and Trapeze Magician, you probably won't even take that damage. Hat Tricker's ability is that every time you would take damage, it would give itself a counter, and then you would not be able to take damage once it has its accumulative counters. But the other benefit of Hat Tricker was that if you control monsters on the field that were more than your opponent, you get to summon this card from your hand, which gave you an optimal special summon of another monster, to where you can then jump into a lot of your Exceeds, your Synchros, and just the range of things that the Performages helped out with when they had their conductive scale. Now, from most people would say, this is a very small engine, how would you ever accomplish the things that you need to? Well, with Performage Pendulum Magician pops things. So you can easily just pop the cards in your Pendulum Zone and just reset them, which will then trigger off majority of their abilities off the bat, which then, at that case, would allow you to then play more of your monsters without any of the repercussions. Alright, from there, we move on from the clowns, and then we talk about the cards that help us get to those scales. We have Lester Pendulum, Vector Pendulum, and Master Pendulum. While all of these happen to be another set of scales that equal to where 4 can be the Pendulum Summon, primarily, these were the cards that helped you against your opponent. The Vector Pendulum made sure that your opponent pendulum monsters, well, cards in your opponent's pendulum zone cannot activate their effect. Pendulum Master Pendulum that had a once per turn. While this card's in your pendulum zone, you destroy a card in the pendulum zone. You target a card in the pendulum zone and destroy it. While Lester Pendulum allows you once a turn with its pendulum effect to then be able to destroy another card in your other pendulum zone, and if you do, you will search out for a card in your deck with the same name. Now, why is this important? Well, this was able to be one of the major assets to destroying your pendulum scales, and then being able to set new scales with their new abilities going into effect. Especially when you can have cards like Vector Pendulum be able to negate other pendulum zone cards effect, other cards in the pendulum zone's effects, while also being able to then set up yours against your opponent. The other benefit to Luster Pendulum, who we're going to go back to for a moment, is that not only is this monster a pendulum monster, but it's also a tuner, and you can use it for a special summon. While this card itself can only be used for the Synchro Fusion Exceed or for a Fusion Synchro or Exceed summon of a Draco Slayer monster, majority of your deck has all those options, so you don't have nothing to really worry about. And how they're all interacting themselves, you really don't have much to worry about there. So that is it for those guys. Leading into our hand traps of Effect Veiler and Maxi, who at the time were the optimal monsters to get. We did have Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbits, if you could afford them. And at most points, people who were playing Maxi and Effect Veiler were definitely running multiples of these. I just don't have multiples of Max. Well, no, I do have an extra Maxi. I forgot where I put it. But, no, Maxi, Veiler were definitely there to help. And if you did have the Ghost Ogre, you were definitely playing it or probably finding someone to play it in your side deck. Moving on from there, we then go into the spell cards, which there's only two: Draco Slayer, Draco Face Off, and Wavering Eyes. Wavering Eyes was already at a conundrum because right after we had got all the major pendulum stuff, this card got limited to one for all the. I didn't even limited to one or banned, and I think at that point it was simply just because the whole pendulum mechanic definitely, laid it straight, where you had all this stuff to pop your scales and pop your opponent's scales and then still benefit from it. And that's what Wavering Eyes did. Was this more beneficial to you, the player who's playing it, than it was to actually be something that was supposed to be anti-pendulum or to help deal with the pendulum situation. While Draco's Face Off itself was also another niche card that helped you set up for your pendulum scales, just helped you set up in general, because you reveal a Draco Slayer and a Draco Overlord in your deck. Then your opponent will randomly choose between the monsters. One will be going to either the pendulum zone or onto the field, and then the other one would go face up into your extra deck. While that seems like it would be a -1 for you, actually, because of how all the abilities worked in this deck, this is not a bad thing for you, because even if you did get your monster, guess what? That's a free monster on the board, and then you can set up all your nice little pretty scales and stuff, and then go off. Yeah, that was how destructive it is. To mind you, both of these cards had to be hit on the Vermilion list, where Wavering Eyes had to be eventually limited to ban, and then Draco Face Off had to hit the limit status. From there, the only traps that I play in this deck itself are the trap cards, Time Chase Trap Hole and Bottomless Trap Hole. While most of the other trap cards at that point we're not seeing as much play, Trap Hole cards were seeing play because Rafflesia was such an easy access to a lot of the rank 4 decks that can spam her. Meaning is why she's also in the extra deck, because you can easily just spam out one of these two with her ability and then still be able to pop things off. Now, going on from there, let's go into the extra deck. First off, we have Draco Ignister. Draco Ignister Prominent. Draco Slayer Ignister Prominence. One tuner monster plus one or more non-tuner monsters. You can target once a turn. You can target one pendulum monster on the field, and or one card in your pendulum zone. In the pendulum zone, destroy that card, and if you do, shuffle one card on the field into the deck. Now, once a turn, you can summon a Draco Slayer monster from your deck at the 5th position, but it cannot be used for a synchro summon. This is part of one of the things that most of the Draco Slayers do, is that they're able to go get monsters, but the monster cannot do one of their corresponding effects in terms of cards in the extra deck. Meaning that if Magister Paladin summons a monster, the monster cannot be used for an Exceed summon. If Dinosaur Power summons a monster, then that monster cannot be used for a fusion summon. While Ignister Providence says it summons a monster, that monster cannot be used as part of a synchro summon. It was a way to balance them out, but also give the need of, these are the monsters that not only bring out cards, but these cards also have their own abilities and stuff as well. Paladin was more so just your in-phase searcher. This is also funny to the point where it has Magic Sector Kieran in its artwork too. You have Dinosaur Power, which is a heavy armored Draco Slayer, which is there to protect your monsters and their abilities from things. But if it died, you were able to get monster back. Then you had Ignister Providence, who bounced things and destroyed things as well in this process. While able to bring out a monster once per turn, the monster can be used for the summon of a synchro monster, which it is. Magister Paladin can get the monster for an Exceed, and Dinosaur can get it for the fusion. But they all seem to work out very well with each other because of how easy it was to just put these things onto the board. Dinosaur Power, for those who don't know, can be easily fusion summoned by just using a Pendulum monster and a Draco Slayer to easily get to it. It's probably one of the many of the contact fusion S abilities of fusion monsters, kind of similar to how Glad Beasts are. Then for the rest of the monsters in the deck, the extra deck, you have the Trapeze Magician, who's absorbing damage and being able to help making monsters be able to swing more than once. Castel, the Sky Blasting Musketeer, to get rid of cards. Lavalval Chain, either to place a card on top of the deck or put the card at the bottom. Rafflesia for your Trap Hole Trap cards. Abyss Dweller to help with graveyard effects. To clear off the field, even though Raigeki and them were at that point legal. Darkhold was at 1, Raigeki was at 1. This is still an option just for those, quick effects when you have less cards than your opponent and you need to start clearing out the board and chain to things. Shockmaster is a crazy one because I don't believe TCG had Shockmaster at that point, or if we did, it was probably only a matter of time before it got banned. But being able to sit on this guy, I think more so this is OCG oriented if they sat on this guy. Otherwise, you can just take this out for Cowboy and stuff. I didn't at that time, and still kind of now, don't have all of the cards to fit for making Cyber Dragon Infinity in them. So yeah. But that was also a tactic that they used. Another one, of course, was going into Utopia the Lightning for a board finisher. And Silent Honor Arc, just to steal one of your monsters and make it as material to protect itself. So with that in turn, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up my Performapal, Performage deck, Draco Slayer deck profile. Yeah, that's right. Pepe was in full effect, and Pepe definitely had a lot of advances to it. Now, if this is more of the OCG variant, then I do apologize to the CCG players, but I am at least doing it as a retro deck profile, so at least counts for that. With that said and told, I do want to thank you guys so much for waiting out for this variation. If I do get the chance, I'll probably drop the Pendulum variant and maybe a Pendulum, Pendulum Magic Spectre variant as well, and even some other things to go along with it. But let me get some time for that, because I have other decks and stuff I gotta focus on as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out tremendously. Hit the notification bell to be informed when I upload more content. And speaking of which, I know a lot of you guys are not subscribed. It would definitely help out if you were, because it boosts up the channel and gets more people to watch more content. So I highly appreciate if you do that. As well, you can follow me on social media. My links are in the description box below, and you guys can catch some of my other content content as well, with playlists and previous videos shown towards the end. Thank you guys so much for watching. HPJ signing out. Take care.